The point is the illusion is to mistake it as this is the rock solid world, and that the transcendental realm is just something airy-fairy, you know? Where actually it's the other way round. Yeah. This is the airy-fairy bit. Because we know, you know, even when we analyse this material, it starts to kind of disintegrate within our eyes. It's purely related to perception in a mind, you know, which is feeding kind of consciousness. So, what is this thing we call reality? You know?
Well, it's a multi-level thing, isn't it? This is the thing. You see, I really balk at the word reality because people say to get real, or, you know, it's not real, or it's not reality. Well, what is reality? You know, it's like on a human material level, yes, okay, you could say this glass is real, but it's a perception. You know, that glass, if you were to look at it like this, well, the table is probably a better example. This solid table, okay? Look at this table under an electron microscope. You would not see anything other than, you know, the plasma screen, as I call it. You know, the jumping dots. So what is the reality? Is the table real? Yes, in our perception, in a five-sensory perceptive world, it's real because I can touch it and I can see it and it holds my glass of water. But at the level of energy, at the quantum level, it's not real at all. It doesn't exist. It exists as something else. You know, this is what we talked earlier about the multi-dimensional, you know, the multi-dimensional world, quote unquote. Again, world is probably the wrong word. But, you know, if we start to think of things in multi-dimensional terms, not just in a single-dimensional, three-dimensional term, then that totally explodes all the myths in the world. Well, it doesn't necessarily explode them, but actually takes you to a position and saying, well, hang on a second, maybe there's a new perspective on this, because if that table is not solid, it's actually a floating mass of energy, then, you know, how else can this, you know, what else can I get from this? You know, what else, you know, where can I go with this? In other words, you then start to apply it in a way that is creative.
Yeah. Well, when you talk about reality, the Bhagavad Gita's got an interesting take on that, which is, if something changes, you can't say it's real.
Everything changes.
Ah. Does soul change? No. Therefore, that must be a level of reality.
Then it's the only reality.
Exactly. That's the point. And that's how you gauge what reality is.
Well, I can accept that.
Yeah, that which never changes, that's real. That which changes, doesn't matter. You know, it may look very solid now, but it changes. And therefore you cannot accept that.
Nothing solid. And remember that everything solid is just a creation of consciousness.
Yeah. But here's another little kind of thing to muse us on. The fact that this kind of quantized soul coming into the world does get bewildered by it all. And we do look at it and think, oh, this is all real. You know? That's an interesting bewilderment, isn't it?
See, my take is that it has to be, it's a bit like, it really is like, you know, Shakespeare said, you know, sort of thinking makes it so, right? You know, we have to have this perception of reality to enable us to exist in a physical world.
Well, that's interesting. When you actually consider, then what is the soul?
Because how could we exist in a physical world? How could we exist as physical bodies if everything around us was just a floating mass of energy? We couldn't, could we?
No, that's right. But But the fact is that the soul is in the material body and it does see all this stuff around and actually thinks, oh, I'm quite comfortable with all this. This actually works quite well.
Is it the soul that sees that, though?
Well, it's this conditioned...
Or is it the...
No, sorry, okay. It's this conditioned...
Yes.
Quantized part of...
Yes, it's the something less than, isn't it?
Yeah, no, it's a quantized part that actually kind of sits... Yeah, I can do this, you know? So, it's bewildered... You know, and this is there's one kind of philosophy within the Vedas that says actually one of the reasons why each of us gets comfortable with the material world and accepts this illusion, this Maya, as reality, and perhaps the only reality, is because we're mistaking it for something we have known.
Oh.
And, that is, remember I mentioned that there is the quantized state in the material world and the quantized state of a spiritual realm.
Yes.
There is some form of it's not quite like that. It doesn't rain, 24 hours a day like it does here. But there's some state. There's some there's some state of existence that we are mistaking it for, and when we kind of have relations, we mistake that for the unconditional love we have previously felt, and that's why we kind of think, how come it's not working like it's supposed to? I'm meant to feel nurtured and satisfied from my loving relationships, but all I do just tends to be miserable. What's going wrong?
Yeah.
And we're bewildered into it because we kind of mistaking it for what we thought it was going to be,
But I mean, how much of that? But this is interesting. How much of that is source, and how much of that is learned, conditioned behaviour? You see what I'm saying? How much of it is actually a product of, our existence in the material human world based on what we're taught to believe, what we're conditioned to believe, you might say, as opposed to the essence of who we are. It's the point I was making earlier.
I think that's right. And see, most psychologists are able to analyse it and take it back and say, well, look, it's a product of this part of your life. This is what your parents did to you. This is what you experienced as a kid, Some people say, oh, this is what happened in your previous life, and they kind of take it like that.
Yeah.
And I think that's all after the fact.
Okay.
I think that's all true.
Well, of course it's after the fact, because everything originates from source soul, right?
Exactly.
So it must be after the fact.
So that's all after the fact. But there is something, there's a kind of impetus from our original source, if you like,
yes,
that is getting manipulated after the fact in the material world. And therefore we can't say, oh yeah, that he's like that because of that. But actually the reason we're even in this state and trying to behave in a certain way is a deeper
But I mean,
impetus.
there is a very...
And like you mentioned earlier, this fact that we have experienced unconditional love affects everything we do. And ultimately, we are chasing that bliss, that pleasure in everything we do, and we mistake in thinking that if I drink this, or if I eat this, or if I, have this relationship, that bliss will return to me. And we're just getting more and more frustrated.
Two things, right? Everything we do is an attempt to get unconditional love. Everything we do.
I accept
everything we do is an attempt to get unconditional love.
Yeah.
Okay?
But even when it's something, or to fill the gap.
Yeah.
Or to fill the gap that we haven't got it.
Yeah.
I basically, either everything we do in this world is simply that attempt to get unconditional love, or it's a distraction.
Yeah. And going back to what you said earlier, right? Again, the bigger picture. You see, some people say, and I'm not going to use the word believe, but I mean, I sense and I intuit, if you like, that we come from an unlimited place. And we're here, quote unquote, to learn limitation. And how we can, if you like, that's the ultimate dichotomy. To live in a place of limitation when you come from a place of unlimitedness. Because if you think about it, in a place of unlimitedness, what's that like? How, we know instinctively but to experience the opposite, it's a bit like oneness and separation. You have to understand separation, as you were alluding to earlier, implying earlier. You have to understand separation. You have to put it into the context of individuality to understand oneness. And I'm spreading my hands out here differently, maybe. Yeah, so it's like that classic dichotomy. It's like having you're having your sort of one foot in each camp. One foot is in the individual camp, and the other foot is in the oneness camp. But it's joining the two. But the ultimate, of course, is to understand that they are not exclusive, they are inclusive.
Yeah, I mean,
and they're inclusive at the point of oneness.
Yeah.